Hello, welcome to Meditation Wednesdays. I'm glad that you're able to join us today. Today I wanted to pick up on a few ideas from last Sunday's sermon about prayer and then to teach a meditation technique that you may want to use. You may find it helpful during these times. So back last Sunday, I was talking about when Jesus says, "If you ask for anything in my name, I will do it," which seems like a huge promise. And I think it is a huge promise. But we have to understand the "in my name" part. In my name means praying for something or being attentive to something in a way that Jesus would. So, or the Spirit of the Divine is another way of looking at it. So, what is it that is God's will? That's ultimately Jesus' prayer. And how do we align ourselves with God's will? You know, growing up, I had the idea that praying was saying prayers. And of course, saying prayers is important and is part of our prayer life. We would say a prayer before going to bed, you know, "Now I lay me down to sleep." Or we would pray before meals, and those are great things to do. We should do that. I don't want to have my words make you think that that's not at all something that I'm advocating, because I am. But I also want to get to the next level of what it means to align ourselves with God's will, which really is more than words. It's about listening. Even when we get to church, we think about prayers. The prayers of the people usually don't allow a lot of time for silence. We listen to prayers that are hopefully well written and sincere, and I think that that's true for us. But it's also there's not a lot of time, other than when we ask for, are there other people that you'd like to name out loud or silently? There's not a lot of place where we just are quiet and listen. And so that got me, I was doing that most of my life, and then in 2010 I took a sabbatical and I went to Plum Village in France, which is a place that was founded by Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a Tibetan Buddhist monk. He's Vietnamese, I'm sorry, I had it wrong. He's a Vietnamese Buddhist monk. And he founded this community after he was exiled from Vietnam. It is a place where it's dedicated to meditation, and I wanted to learn about that. So I participated in their daily prayers. I went with the monks in the morning, and on several times during the day. First one is at 5:45. You have to be on your mat, ready to pray at 5:45 a.m., and it's a 45-minute sit. It was challenging for me. Two things. First of all, getting up early is challenging, but the second part was the sitting still and listening. I realized how much of my life is full of chatter, how much of my mind is full of chatter, how I distract myself all the time from whatever it is that's really happening around me. And slowing myself, focusing on my breathing, paying attention to what is actually here versus something in the past or something in the present. All of that became extraordinarily helpful for me, and I learned what I would say in my own experience. I learned how to pray maybe for the first time, which is kind of embarrassing because I'd been saying prayers and I've been a pastor for 15 years at that time. But I learned how to have that inner space of dialogue with God where you just listen and pay attention to the present moment. So as I started to do that, I've continued to have a meditation practice as part of my life. When it says that Jesus went to when he says, when you pray to your Father, go to your inner room, you have to remember that Jesus lived in a time, and certainly of a social economic class, where he didn't have multi-rooms. That meant that was a metaphor for go to your inner space, that place that is inside you where you can listen and you can align yourself with God's world and with God's will. So if we look at prayer in that sense, then we have a lot in common with the different traditions in the world that practice meditation. In fact, meditation in many ways is a deep form of prayer for us. In these times of challenging social, economic, and health crises, when we see our country polarized and we see our world divided, and when we have wondered at times, could some big event like an extraordinary event happen, and could that draw us together? I've heard people say, would it take another 9/11 to bring our country together? And yet we're living in a time in which on average 2,000 plus people are dying every day in our country, and unfortunately it's both bringing us together in some ways and tearing us apart right now. So how do we hold all of that? How do we watch the news in a way that is prayerful, that aligns ourselves with the divine intentions that exist? So this is where meditation can become very helpful. I want to teach you a practice and invite you into it called Tonglen. Tonglen is Tibetan. That word means giving and receiving. And so it's a very simple practice. But remember, I've always said this in the past, simple does not mean easy. So don't get down on yourself if you start to do this and then you find it's very hard to focus and to continue. That's okay. That's okay. That's part of it. In fact, if you judge yourself and get down on yourself in the midst of this, you're going to pull yourself out of the meditative listening stance. So when you find your mind drifting to other things, when you find yourself thinking about the past or the future, just say to yourself, thinking, and focus on your breath. It's okay. Don't say those thoughts are bad. Just say that they are. And then bring yourself back to your breath and to the present moment. Tonglen, giving and receiving. This idea and this focus can be helpful for those of us who are watching the news a lot and paying attention to the challenges and the crises of the world. As people who are followers of Jesus, we are called to pay attention to the real world. We are not called to distract ourselves or to use our privilege to stay away from the pain and the suffering of the world. I know that sometimes we watch too much and that can become a way in which we overdo it and become despondent or depressed. But what I want us to do is to use this practice. So here's how it works. Tonglen, giving and receiving. When you breathe in, you take in that which is suffering in the world. So you can be reading the paper, or you could be watching something on TV, and as some suffering comes up in front of you, you breathe it in and you feel it in your body. The suffering of other people, the struggles that they're going through, their sense of their own yearnings and hopelessness. Feel it in your heart. And then as you breathe out, you breathe peace. You say, I wish that region, those people, that individual, I wish them wholeness and peace. I wish them some sense of joy and contentment. So you breathe in suffering, you breathe out peace. And for some of us, we can think of specific individuals, and maybe that's even ourselves. If you're facing an illness or some other life challenge that is specifically challenging for you, you can breathe it in and feel it fully, and then breathe for yourself out. And I wish myself wholeness, and I wish myself peace at the same time. So as we do that, so you can focus on, there's different ways to do it. You could just focus on one thing for a sit if you'd like to think about, today I just saw a challenging news piece on PBS NewsHour about the rise in child abuse that is happening in our country right now as a result of people sheltering in place and not having a lot of those first responder people like teachers that might be paying attention to when children are being harmed by members of their family. And that hurts me, and it hurts them obviously, but as I feel it, it hurts me. But Tonglen gives me an opportunity to breathe it in, to feel it, to feel what it is to have fear, to have pain, to have those you trust harming you, and then to breathe out to that whole situation peace and love and hope, that the child who's being abused first and foremost would find hope and peace, but then also their family system would be able to find wholeness and hope and peace, that they would be able to find a way past this time. Whatever it is that is on your heart, when you open yourself up to God's will in your life, you're also opening yourself up to have your heart break for the very things that break God's heart. So if it is racial injustice, if it is the lack of economic possibilities for many people, if it's for illnesses that are getting out of control, whatever it is that is on your heart, breathe it in, feel it, and then breathe out peace, wholeness, love, and joy. By doing that, we function as filters in the world. We breathe in all that is difficult, and we breathe out all that is good. Sort of like the way this tree that's behind me, it takes in all the carbon dioxide, all that carbon that is hurting our atmosphere and our planet, and then it breathes out oxygen, something that we can breathe again. This particular tree also gives me amazing avocados. So it takes in all of the nutrients and then gives out this delicious fruit. When we pray in that sense, we become agents of God's love and of God's peace. We actively participate in the healing of the world. So here's how you do it. You can take a moment and you can sit with your feet on the ground and your back erect. You can either close your eyes or you can focus sort of a loose gaze about 4 feet out in front of you. I like to begin with my palms flat on my thighs as a way of grounding myself, and after I've been breathing for a while, meditating for a while, then I turn them up like this so that I can receive whenever that feels right to you. And then you just quiet yourself and begin to breathe. You breathe in the challenges, the pain, the fears that you have, but then also your neighbors in this world has. And then you breathe out peace. You breathe out love. You breathe out justice. You breathe out hope and joy. And you continue to do this. I would say, let's try for a minimum of 10 minutes. It just takes time to breathe in and to breathe out. As you do that, so what we're going to do here is I'm going to start you on this process, and then I'm going to invite you to continue offline, to find a place. And if it's now, great. If it's not now, if it's something you want to do later on, that's also just fine. And may we commit to one another that we would practice this meditative breathing, that we would be agents of love and peace in a very direct sense every single day for at least 10 minutes during this time. Take a moment, look at the news, let it in, and then breathe out all those things that you wish for those people in those places. So I invite you to join me now. Let us begin and let us breathe together. It helps if you smile. May God bless your sitting.